Time. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, January 9th meeting of the Community Preservation Committee here at Town Hall. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via in-person and via remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town website an audio or video meeting transcript or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the public meeting, please email your questions or comments prior to or during the meeting to cpcemails@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be provided to the committee before the meeting or read out loud during the proceedings if received during or shortly before the meeting. Okay, so tonight, I'll give a general outline for the folks who are here in person. We will introduce our new member, and then we will hear from anyone who is here to explain an application or notice of intent that's coming our way, and that way we can let them go. And then we will discuss eligibility. We'll look at some quarterly reports. We'll do the meeting minutes, etc. So any questions on that before we get started? So I'd like to welcome Marcia Finkelstein as a new member of the committee appointed by the Housing Authority to represent the Housing Authority under the statute. So welcome, Marcia.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's great that we have a new member as we head into the busiest part of the year. There's a lot involved, so feel free to ask questions and avail yourselves of the other members in the committee who, are longer in the tooth than you are, and know a lot about this. So, it's a great committee.
Yeah.
So,
we weren't sure we would, so thank you for doing it.
yeah,
I'm sorry?
Thank you for doing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
no problem. Glad to-
that's good. And as I've said before, I think we've had a tight margin with 8 members and a 5-member. Even though the membership number has been essentially 8 for the past couple of years, our quorum number stays at 5, which makes it difficult, especially during cold and flu season and Florida season and all that stuff that happens, around here. So I appreciate everybody's efforts, and I think it's great, that we have we have another member and more bandwidth and more ability to, there are a lot of times I think people have shown up when they otherwise might not have, and I appreciate that, especially for those of you who sit on other boards and committees, the fields, planning, conservation, historic. So I know it's a lot of nights out, especially when it's 25 degrees and the wind is blowing pretty hard. So thank you.
And a female member.
Yes.
We need
Yeah.
a female member.
Okay. So if you're here on behalf of an application, looks like we have a few people. So we have the Historic Society. Anybody else? 2 historic societies. And- okay.
Same
Great.
society, different friends.
Okay. And then, sorry, in the second row? Okay. Do you want to come first? Come up and introduce yourself and sit, because I think yours will be a little bit, I read the Historic Societies, and they're old pros.
Yeah, so you have to bear with me. This is my first time coming and making. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Whatever you're more comfortable with.
I don't know. Hi, I'm Rachel Cassidy, and I live at 266 Main Street, otherwise known as Mysteria House. Terry has driven by my dad and I at work a bunch outside and pulled over a couple times and told me about this committee. So basically, I moved into the house in 2020. I've done a bunch of work on it already. Thankfully, my dad was a contractor, so he's done a ton of the historic restoration for me / with me. So that's been great. So we've done things like repaired the more robust part of the fence right in front of the house, which is mahogany and tons of different pieces to get that thing constructed. It's very cool. And then the picket fence, which if you guys live nearby, you may know that it's always getting hit by things. So someone recently hit an apple tree on Main Street. Thankfully, that's just a chain link fence, although I'd love to replace that over time with more of the picket fence that's on the other side of the property. But then also the telephone pole on Church Street. That was, that prevented someone from driving through my fence into my yard. And then in 2020 or 21, I guess, a plow took out some of those pickets. So basically that fence itself is in a constant state of repair. I just noticed a loose picket the other day. My dog did get out once last summer because of that kind of a thing. So anyway, that's just one of the types of projects. It just needs constant upkeep. And of course I want it to be in keeping with the historic elements of it. There's also just general work that needs to be done there. So I actually did already have this work done because it was it was much more of like a maintenance thing that was going to become an issue. So replacing some of I thought they were called soffits, but I think they're called something else. But basically like where the roof line meets the house was starting to rot, and so water was going through there. So anyway, I put in this proposal kind of loosely based on some of the things that I knew I needed to do. The chimneys also need some repair. They need to be capped off, basically. One company said that I need to replace an entire stack, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think the Historic Commission would let me do that anyway. So there's just a number of projects that need to be done, and a lot of the work is being done by me and my family, so it's mostly just supplies that I have expenses with right now, except for the things that are on the roof, because my dad is 70, wait, no, how old is he? He's 30 years older than me, so 75, so not asking him to do those kinds of things. So yeah, I just wanted to come and see what kind of options there are for help with that stuff, and if there aren't any, then I'm still going to be doing the work, but just wanted to check in and see if there was any funding that I could use.
Yeah, I think, I think we'll reply back and we'll definitely include the criteria. So I think like the big things for us as a committee, because it's a public body, like
Yeah.
there is a sort of process around if a historic project is eligible for funding.
Yeah.
And the first step is to make sure that it's deemed historically significant, which may or may not have happened, I don't know. But you go to the Historic Commission and say, like, would you support this, finding?
In this
Yeah.
case, I don't think they have to because it's on the Mass Register.
Oh, it is, it's on the Mass
It's in
Register.
Historic New England.
Oh, great.
Program,
Okay,
too.
good. So that's done, and I think rehabilitation is eligible. I think the second part is there's a public purpose, so there is, and we have like recognized the public, if you look at the website for the Community Preservation Coalition, they do talk about how, historic preservation is a public purpose. I think, our committee has been especially focused on making sure there's like public access and working out what sort of a form that takes in terms of, like a home tour on this sort of thing, or a plaque, saying, that's another thing to say, like, okay, the town has supported this project. And so I think those are some of the things we're talking about, and then so it already has a conservation restriction in place on the existing structure and everything.
Yeah, as in, like, I can't modernize it? Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yes.
The guidelines.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are the things that I would be thinking about, but I think it's certainly good. That's where I would start. Other people want to chime in?
Well, I stopped and talked to her a couple of times, because one, I was impressed that the detail they were putting into making it exactly, I grew up right a couple houses down, so, the detail that they were doing to put everything back original was impressing me. And I had talked to the building inspector, and he said, you should stop and talk to them, because they're doing an amazing job over there, so I did.
That's only that.
And so I looked at that, and at one point, John had talked about whether or not maybe putting together something that we could help people who got, the more people will take on these projects and restore these homes in North Andover. We should be encouraging that, in my opinion, as much as we can. It's just how we do it, and how we go about it.
I mean, a couple things. The idea that I had that I'd still like to put forward, and I talked to Joanna briefly about it, is to have a small fund available for people who want to do historical projects on the property, and that, you know, would be a relatively small amount. We could, you know, basically sponsor it through a combination of the committee and the Historical Society. And the benefit might be that might be a, you know, there has to be a public benefit. That's the thing, Bill. I think you raised that point well from it, and maybe it's, you know, once a year tour of the house or something like that. Frankly, when you get into a lot of money on a private property, it becomes a little bit more complicated. And I think you appreciate that. I mean, you really do, because in cases where we've had large projects, historical projects on either private or it's more nonprofit property, is we've gotten significant benefits like a conservation restriction and some of the other things that we've done with the Historical Society, so it becomes difficult. But, you know, maybe small scale, I mean, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 type projects would be the kinds of things we'd support. It'd be fun, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
great with the sweat equity in this job.
Oh, that's right, it's the ultimate,
Yeah.
you know, and you, for all you know, you might get some other people. Terry may get a few people out to help you.
I will also accept that.
Yeah.
John, I'd like to echo, I just
Yeah.
quickly read the coalition's website today, and they actually had a couple examples of just that, as the committees put together a small pool of money to set aside for small projects to help out these kinds of things. And it's actually not a bad idea, like you were just talking about. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is this report that's going to be coming out soon, Zach. It's going to actually have basically an inventory of everything that's out there. It's actually going to identify all the houses, everything, not everything, but pretty much a good inventory of historical homes that people might say, this is really nice, but it needs something, needs some work on it. So there might be a pool of money there for that, to support that kind of effort as well. Good thoughts.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm wondering whether we should get town council involved sooner rather than later here in terms of the public funds for private
Right.
purposes and what
Yeah,
what we
I went
actually.
back and I reread the language on the coalition today, and they basically addressed that pretty explicitly. And I thought, well, but the basic idea is you have to get some public benefit back.
How do you enforce
And
that?
it can be in in certain cases, it's like the conservation restriction is an obvious one, but that's moot here. But in other cases, you could, you know, have a settlement agreement just saying that, you know, in order to get this money, you have to do a tour once a year for 5 years or something like that, making that up.
I would actually love to do that,
Yeah,
because there's a book about the house.
Yeah.
And like there are certain, I have old photos, the pantry is basically unchanged.
I mean,
I love this house.
we
I
don't,
mean,
you know, I mean, we don't have one of those Christmas walks that a lot of towns
Oh,
do. But we
yeah.
got enough, between your house and Brad's house and
Oh, yeah,
maybe
we'll
a
get
few
Brad's
other
house in.
ones, you know. It'd be fun,
Yeah.
yeah.
It seems that the pros and challenges are kind of pretty apparent. I mean, the house is clearly historic, right? There's not much of a
Yeah.
question about that. And you're asking for like a reasonable amount. You haven't come in here asking for 900 grand,
Right.
you know? And to John's point, there's sweat equity involved in what you're presenting. So the fact that it's a reasonable ask certainly helps you. Obviously, the challenge is the public benefit part, the public access part. That's what I think, that's probably your most difficult hurdle.
Yeah, and then, so is that the kind of thing that I would like propose something to meet that, or like what would be the next step there for me?
What would you say, Bill?
Yeah, I would say like filling out the application, you know, the formal application fully, and I think like,
Okay,
you know, on the estimates, like definitely come in with a number with, you know, some sort of, you know, estimate that gets a ballpark figure that gets us there. Like supplies would be, you know, go to a contractor and say it would be this much in supplies and that much in labor, so that we have sort of a
Let's
sense.
be very specific.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
as much detail as you can get, you know, sort of.
Didn't the Historical Society have some type of walk in the summer, or is it the garden walk?
we used to have house tours.
Yeah, right.
Like 10 years ago or more.
Sure.
You know, where they would have a group of historic houses that you could visit. They haven't done it, we haven't done it in a while, but we've been talking about trying to get it going again.
Yeah, we're planning some for this year, for the anniversary of Revolution,
Oh, right.
in April. When was the house built?
1839. It's a little
1839,
late.
but yes,
For
we're planning
that,
some
but-
house and garden tours
Yeah.
for this year and next year, moving forward.
Yeah.
Again,
Can
I mean,
someone,
either way,
reintroduce the public to the internet.
Yeah.
can someone on the committee give me a little more perspective in terms of like what we've done in the past with strictly private residents? Have we approved projects similar to this? Have we turned them away?
I don't think,
Have we
we
had one at
actually
all?
haven't done any. I can't think of a single one. Everything is, you know, if you look at the circle of things, you got anything that's municipal is first. And then you have nonprofit, which I mean, the Historical Society is the best example, and Stevens Estate. And then there might be a couple of other outliers, but that's basic. We've never done something for historical preservation that's been exclusively private. We have, you know, some of the open space projects arguably involve conservation easements and not ownership, so it's a little bit different. But in historic, we've not done this. That's why my thought was we put our, you know, toe in the water by having a program that's maybe a jointly sponsored program and gets us started, because, you know, if, for example, you came in and said, I want $500,000, we go, oh my God, you know, I mean, we love the house and everything, but $500,000 for private benefits, tough sell, so, yeah.
and then I guess the other part is, in terms of administration, you know, like who would ultimately, I don't know if, I mean, that could be a question that we take up, like who ultimately says, okay, this is, you know, this is sort of an allowable amount, you know, or, and.
Well, yeah, we're
so
gonna
forth.
set a precedent, it sounds like.
Right.
So,
No, it sounds like some already exist.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
coalition
In the Commonwealth, yeah.
documentation, it is. In fact, there's a lot of it was income-based.
I mean, I'll come back, I just been a switch on this, but I'll come back with, I'll go and I'll look at it, but, you know, try to craft something and send it out about, you know, how to do it, like, you know, and you have to decide, do you want to start the thing with a small grant, you know?
Right.
Not very much money. Frankly, I think that's a better way to go, because you learn as you go, that kind of thing, but, you know, thinking out loud, like, maybe if we authorize 25 to 50,000 in increments no larger than 5,000, you know, who knows what we'll say, and, you know.
Yeah.
would we consider at all, could we consider at all, the homeowner's income?
Again, one of the examples, and there's a few things going on in that documentation. One of the criteria was like, oh, this one town uses income, but I don't necessarily know if that's the only or best way or whatever. I mean, I'm sure you're a billionaire and you can afford $5,000, but
Right, well, that's what I mean, that's what I mean. You know?
that would be the point about, I'm not gonna give you 5,000 if you're a billionaire kind of thing.
Totally, yeah. I actually think that's a really good idea.
Right. So we obviously have to think of all
Right.
things when considering this.
Yeah, so I think in the application, it would be, you know, sort of a reasonable degree of specificity about what you wanted to accomplish and, you know, an estimate around that. And then, you know, also saying like the public benefit that, you know,
Okay.
propose a public benefit could be part of it. And then we'll, on our side, we'll go back and talk to town council and sort of, you know, continue to have a debate about that. But I think for your application purposes, it would be, you want to do these 1, 2, or 3 year things, and this is about
Yeah.
how much it is.
Okay.
There's been like a whole book written on the house, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
It would be great just, you know, for the public that are watching this or want to go back and watch this, if you could give us just a couple minute Cliff Notes version of the history of the house, that'd be
Yeah,
nice to hear.
yeah. So it's basically been in 4 families, if you include me. So it was built in 1839 by the Hodges family, who were actually not there for very long. And then it was in the Field family for at least 2 generations. So Sarah Moorfield is the person who lived there the longest. She lived to be over 100. And so she was born and died in that house in my living room. And it's actually like, it's quite cool for the barn project. Some of her tools are still in the barn with her initials on them, which I think is fascinating because I'm sure she did not use them. I'm sure they were like used by her staff. But anyway, she died in the 80s, and then the Elliots lived there before I bought it in 2020. I believe it was actually on the market for like 3 years, so I got very, very lucky. Grew up in a historic house and just love it. Definitely consider myself to be a steward of it. But yeah, I mean, there's like amazing things in the house still. So I discovered 2 years in that there's Hodges is scrolled into one of the glass panes on the first floor, presumably with like a diamond, as was the custom with women, making sure their jewels were legit. So yeah, there's like a bunch of really fun little things about it like that. I mean, I know some more of like the details around it. So like Sarah Moorfield she lived there alone for her whole life. She was a very independent woman. She had some siblings, no kids. So like she wanted the house to be a historic house museum when she passed away. And so she left it to the Trinitarian Church. And then when they dug into it, they realized that they couldn't put it on with the amount of money that she left and support it that way. So they put it into the easement program with Historic New England. And so they come every year and do their walkthrough to make sure that I'm not messing with anything. But there's some great stuff in the house. There's like this amazing protected wallpaper on the 3rd floor. Have you seen it? Have you been in it? Okay, yeah, and so I think that's from like the 1850s was the estimate, and it's like a collage style, which would have been like a very economic way of wallpapering a space. So yeah, it's a great house, and honestly, if any of you guys are interested in just coming and seeing it, I love showing people the house. So
Yeah, well, we look forward to it. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming by and the conversation.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Your
Appreciate just
commitment
learning more about
to
Thanks for your
preservation.
commitment to the house, yeah.
I love it.
Regardless.
I'm very, very lucky. Well, thank you.
Anyone could buy the book about it.
You
at
can.
the Historical Society.
Okay. Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for having me specifically today. I will let Stan speak on behalf of his project. Thank you to Zach for giving me the heads up on it. I want to apologize because the original...
Joanna, make sure you say who you are first.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Joanna Collins-Heinker, thank you. I'm the Executive Director at the North Andover Historical Society. Yes, I originally submitted a notice of project intent. And thanks to Bill, by the way. Bill was very helpful and introduced me to Stuart from the Community Preservation Coalition, so I had a good conversation with him. I had originally come to the meeting in November and asked whether we would be able to apply for funding for heat pumps that we had to install in the historic Founders Hall, which is right on Mass Ave and Academy Road as part of the Johnson Cottage compound at the Historical Society. This compound has a one-room schoolhouse. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids that go through and take field trips and churn butter in there every year. And the Founders Hall furnace died last winter, and I'd originally applied with the notice of intent for installing heat pumps as this project. But after having conversations and talking with Bill and Stuart and my board at the Historical Society, we were able to find funding to install these heat pumps in the Founders Hall in just before Thanksgiving, and they're doing fantastic work. We were able to wriggle around and get the funding for it, so I didn't need to come to the Community Preservation Committee to ask for those funds. I did also, I was a little bit concerned about setting precedent, as you had all reminded me. Once you ask for funds for a project for the CPC, for a project that has already been committed and spent and completed, I would be setting a precedent, and you would be setting a precedent in allowing me to do that. So after significant consideration, that was taken off the table. My second project that I had intended to bring to the CPC was the small Hayscales building, which is on the corner of Andover Street and Osgood Street. Again, it's on the Common. We are having, we've had some deterioration of the actual weighing platform, which is next to this building. But we've actually applied for funds from the Festival of Trees in order to do that project. It's a very small project. And with that in mind, I sent to Zach, and actually I would like to request funds for two separate projects. These projects, one, again, is for the Founders Hall and Johnson Cottage, and one is for the Parson Barnard House, which is one of the oldest houses in town. We have open houses to the public. We had hundreds of people that visited it last year. And the projects are kind of related to the CPC funds that have already been generously donated by the town for the work that has been for the work that has been done in 2023 and 2024. We were given funds 2 years ago for restoring the interiors, painting, floors, finishes, windows. We're about 90% complete on both of those properties. We installed heat pumps both at the Parson Barnard House and, as I said, in the Founders Hall. And my request this year will be for insulation. Now, insulation is invisible. You don't see it in the walls of the building or the ceiling of the building, but the insulation is kind of a critical piece of the puzzle in making sure that we get to continue preserving these two properties for the future. It will enhance the efficiency of the heat pumps that we've installed. It will preserve the interiors. It will provide humidity control and temperature control in these two buildings, and will be invisible, but I think it's really, really important to continue to preserve the work that we have done with CPC funds and on behalf of the historic buildings and the materials and objects and furniture there is in there. I'm proposing, I've spoken with several insulation installation companies, and I have obtained a quote from one of them, and I'm looking for both properties for approximately $25,000. I still need to finesse some of the details on those, but it would be approximately $25,000 for the Founders Hall, Johnson Cottage for the entire space, and then $25,000 for the Parson Barnard House. Please and thank you.
Joanne, is it eligible for Mass Save? Do you know?
So I've spoken with several, actually myself and my caretakers at the two properties, we've spoken with several organizations. The companies that are part of the Mass, we did look into this, the companies that are part of the Mass Save rebate program, they only use certain types of insulation in these programs, which is blown-in foam insulation. And there are two problems with that. One is that we would have to make exterior holes in the walls to blow it in. And then secondly, the foam itself actually changes, it expands and contracts with the temperatures. So in really cold temperatures like this, it would expand. So that would cause potential problems with both of those buildings because they're very old buildings, and especially with the Parson Barnard House. So speaking to a number of different people that have expertise on this area, I decided to get my first quote from a company with experience in historic buildings insulation.
Is it eligible? Do we know?
I mean, when I look at it and I say, like, is it, it's protecting historic assets, in other words, I think it would. We know that we've got restrictions and all that sort of in place, and there's obviously plenty of access. So I don't see a big barrier on the eligibility front.
I agree. I think it's fine. I think it fits in with its refurbishment, structural, because it's not maintenance,
Right.
which is something you do every year. It's something you would do every 25, 50 years to preserve
Yeah.
the property, so I think it fits.
Yeah.
Do you have to remove
interior walls in order to install the insulation boards? I mean, that's,
Yes, but they can be removed in a
Sheets.
way and then replaced in a way that it's not damaging, or that we can address the removal points without making it look obvious that has been done. And by using a company that has expertise with historic buildings, I've been in a property that they've actually been, that they've worked, and I've seen that they've done a really good job in buttoning it back up again.
Is it good forever? Does it need to be replaced again? And
I think there is a lifespan on it, and
It's gotta be
probably 20, 30 years. But
It'll even last longer than that. They
Yeah.
use it on the exterior buildings,
Yeah.
backfill against foundations.
okay, great.
Question for you.
Yes.
When you purchased the heat pumps for the buildings, were those eligible for rebates from Mass Save as well?
Yes. they
And
were.
were you able to secure those?
Not yet. We're still working on one. Actually, we're still working on both
And what
of
were
them.
what were the rebates for the,
We don't know yet because we're still working on the calculations.
because that might impact
For the-
like an amount, so if you get, how many heat pumps did you purchase for the
So,
properties?
2 heat pumps for the Founders Hall, which were privately funded for the Historical Society, and then the 2 heat pumps for the Parson Barnard House through the CPC funds that we'd already been given.
So that could potentially be thousands of dollars,
That's right, yes.
depending
yeah.
on what Mass Save ends up
Yeah,
saying.
and we could probably find that out in the next month or two. So
That could be helpful in,
what we wouldn't spend,
yes.
you know,
in-
what we would be
Yes.
reimbursed, we would be able to apply.
Excellent, thank you.
The whole
True
building
to
is
that.
fossil fuel free, essentially, right?
That's right. So at Parson Barnard House, we've eliminated fossil fuels, which is great. We still
Cheers.
have one gas furnace in the caretaker's cottage at Johnson Cottage, but the Founders Hall has been completely eliminated. We did have oil in there, and that's gone.
Cool.
As part of our attempts to be sustainable stewards of our buildings, and hopefully we can encourage more homeowners in town to have the same mindset.
Okay. All right, any further questions? I think we're- No, it's great, and I appreciate it, and I publicly apologize for missing that meeting with Stuart, but I'm glad you guys connected.
That's great. No, thank you. Thank you for connecting me with him. I really do appreciate that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll take your lead for because I got tired of that.
Okay.
Okay. Stan Lippert, I'm on the board of the Historical Society, and I'm here to answer questions about the Schofield Mill project. Should I reiterate what we're planning to do? Would
Yeah,
that
I
be
think
helpful?
that'd be helpful.
So the Schofield Mill, as you all know, was being used by the North Andover thrift store for a number of years until the building was condemned about 3 years ago. And it's owned by the town. And the town has been thinking about what to do about the building. They actually received, I think it's FY '21, $200,000 from you all to use for some refurbishment, which they never use. So that money is just encumbered but unused at this point. So our plan is to do a couple of things. First is to transfer the ownership of the building, the property, to the Historical Society in exchange for a piece of property we have adjacent to the first burying ground, between the first burying ground and the creek that runs parallel to Osgood Street, kind of as a barrier, a protective barrier for the first burying ground. So it would be like a land swap between the two properties. We would then refurbish the Schofield Mill and the property there, and would use it much like we use Parson Barnard House. It would be used for historical education, open houses, would have information in it, and we would open it some number of times per year for the public to attend, just like we do with Parson Barnard. So that's kind of the plan. And We might even try to, provide some areas there on that site for people to, I don't know, be able to have a picnic or eat some food. We could put some picnic tables there. It's not a bad location, and it's kind of the gateway to the river as you go further on down. So there have been a number of different plans proposed for the building, some more extensive than others. Our intent in the refurbishment of the building would be to just make it usable. We're not going to try to replicate what it probably looked like when it was a mill. That would be well beyond anybody's interest in wanting to pay for it. But we're going to do several things. First is solve the problem that caused the condemnation, which is shoring up some floor joists in the basement in one area. Secondly, some work was started to, I don't know what they were thinking of, to sort of look into the walls or do something. So we have to do some restoration of some things that were already started. We're going to take out the kitchenette that was in there. Just it's not applicable or no longer needed, because up until the time the thrift store moved in there, that was a private residence for a long time. People lived there. And we're also going to we're going to make the bathroom ADA accessible, make the doors larger so people could get in there if they needed to or wanted to, and do some renovation in the bathroom. Like, we're going to take the bathtub out and do some other things in there. But basically, it's to just provide a space that, looks more reasonable than it does now, so that we can use it for education purposes. It's a great place for us to provide displays and information about the industrial heritage of North Andover and its mills, and we hope that it would attract people to come there and want to see some of that information and see what it looked like. And, we have to do some site work. I'm sure many of you have been down there at one time or another. We probably got to put some fencing along the back of that property so there's no hazard in falling into the brook. That's a pretty precipitous fall back there, so we probably have to close that off a little bit and just make sure it's safe for people to be there. And we need to clean up the site. Not much has been done with that site for a number of years. Just brush and landscaping and stuff. So that's kind of the plan, and we're very optimistic about the being able to use the building and make it part of our town's heritage. I mean, it's one of the most iconic buildings in North Andover, and it's certainly probably now the single most iconic mill building left in our town. So we hope to be able to preserve it and display it so people can come and benefit from seeing it. So there you go.
Stan, what is actually left in the building from the original structure? The basic structure itself, people are starting to look at that. The
So,
frame.
but other than that, there isn't much left that you can see that would look like what it would have looked like 200 years ago. So that's something we're going to have to decide how we're going to represent. We can't go back. It's just way too expensive to do any sort of restoration of that look, but we're going to do the best we can. So.
Stan, has there been any inventory done on it for structural repairs that need to be done other than what you said in the basement?
There have been. The structure itself is in not bad shape. You all gave the town $130,000 10 years ago. And so they put a new roof on the building. They put new siding on the building. They fixed up, there was a deck in the back that was all broken down, so they put a new deck on the back. And at that time, people looked at the structure. And it seems to be, generally speaking, in good shape, except for the basement problem. And that's, I don't know if you all are aware, but it's only in one spot. About 2/3 of the building is on grade. So there's no, It's just on the ground, it's, you know, so there's no basement. There's just this one section where there's the basement, and that's where the problem is with the deterioration of the floor joist under there. So that's the one where we need to repair. Everything else looks in good shape. We were just in the building again this week and looked underneath the back part, and it's dry, clean, everything looks really good, so,
Have you met with Steve Foster on that?
yes.
And did he talk to you about any insect infestation in the
Yes,
in the wood?
that's the stuff in the basement, so that's what we've really got to repair. There's been,
That's where they stopped the project, because they said they didn't have enough money with what that's why they haven't used that grant,
yeah.
because they
And
said
I think,
there wasn't enough money.
you know, I
there to
think we've
repair
come
it.
up with some ways to deal with that, you know, like, much like we did with the Parson Barnard Barn with the money you gave us to, you know, we had this similar kind of a problem there where there were some structural issues and we were able to fix that up. So we're going to do similar kinds of things. You know, one advantage we have with that part of the project is nobody goes down in the basement, right? That's not a thing. So we can shore that up in ways that may not be exactly historically accurate, but that's okay as long as it's, you know, the building inspector says it's okay enough. So that's the plan. So we feel confident we're going to be able to do something with that.
And remind me how big the building is, how many square feet?
It's, the lot is, the site is maybe 2/3 of an acre, and the building's about, what, 20 by 40 maybe, or something, 20 by 60, something like that. It's not very big.
Yeah,
It's
I
pretty
would think
small.
so.
So why is it historically significant? Catch me up to speed on this.
It claims to be one of the first mill buildings built in northern New England. You know, there were mills existing in Rhode Island and Connecticut prior to this, but this was the first one. It was built in 1802, and it was a fulling mill where they prepared wool for further processing. And it did that for a number of years, and then became part of the Sutton Mill when the Sutton Mill was built next door. It just fell into disuse as the mills got bigger and they got more integrated.
You should tell them about the Schofield brothers coming over from England and all
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a.
The guys who built this were very integral to the whole Industrial Revolution here in this part of New England. And they built a whole bunch of mills in different places, in Rowley and all over the place. And this is just one of them. And they were quite the guys to get everything jump-started for the Industrial Revolution. So it's very historically significant, the building itself.
Well, that's really my next question, Stan. And maybe I'm not being sensitive. I mean, the history, what I just heard is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds to me like there's been a lot of things done to the building over time.
Right.
That the building itself has lost the original character of what it was in 1802. And my comparison would be the Parson Barnard House, where you can actually see the character, you can actually feel and touch and be back then. Whereas I'm not sure if that's the same thing with the Schofield Mill, even though it does have that significance you described. My point is that new roof, new deck, new shorings, you just, what's historical other than the site itself, and you can put a plaque up.
Give me a rock, yeah.
Yeah, you could put a plaque up that says, here sat, you know, the Schofield brothers first. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but it's like,
No, but-
when does it become no longer a historical building? It becomes a building, a historical building used to be here. And this
So
will be
if I
replaced
look
with.
at the exterior envelope, it looks like what it would have looked like over time. Now, it's different materials and all that, but it still looks like what you would have expected to see over the last couple of 100 years. So it looks the same on the exterior. Interior, no question. It's completely different than it would have looked in like 1810. But there's nothing we can do about that at this point.
Do we have any photographs of the inside of that?
There may be.
Yeah. I think what's significant is the building size and everything, to think that they brought over a pattern in their head, because they weren't allowed to bring
right.
drawings with them, so they had to memorize the drawings, come over, build this machine, which was a one-of-a-kind in the United States at the time, and start manufacturing
Right.
this small little
Right.
building, which I think is pretty cool, that this, if you look at all the factories that were
Right.
built after it, but it all started in that one little building.
Right.
That's, to me, is what is pretty.
And it gives us the opportunity to, put information displays in there for educational purposes. Which you can't do with, it's hard to do with a rock.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It really is.
A rock and a plaque,
We
right?
don't know what happened to the original machinery that was in there, do we?
Some of it went to the Smithsonian, actually.
Wow.
Some of it was of such historic significance that they wanted it, and it was shipped there. Some of the machinery that was in there, in that mill originally.
Wow. It's just the number that's being tagged on this right now and the project intent is, especially the size of the place you're talking about, is just like, wow.
So so we're further refining the number. The number we're now working on is somewhere between 300 and 350.
That's half of what you're.
Right. So again, I'm always sensitive to the fact that these are cost reimbursable grants, right? We only get paid for what we spend, right? So it means probably it's important to err a little bit on the side of caution, because you don't know what a project's going to involve until you get into it. But we're further refining our estimates, and we've certainly, our pencil has become sharper as we've gone along, and it will probably be that way by the time we submit our proposal. Understanding, as we know, there's already $200,000 essentially available, right, that's been committed. So if we're
So
talking,
that comes back to the CPC, right?
what's that?
When the
Yes.
property gets transferred.
So the town would give that money back.
Right. So it's whatever number they come up with minus the
Yeah,
$200.
but it's money that was encumbered and then will go back into the pool and be available, so.
I'm sorry, forgive me, the 200 grand is that's unspent CPC
Right,
funds?
yes.
Gotcha.
Right.
Unspent, right.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So,
we would just, like we closed some other projects, we would just close the project, it becomes unencumbered, and, nothing
Goes
goes back,
back into
it goes
the-
in and out, we just say we can use it now.
goes back in the account or wherever it goes, right?
One more time, Stan, what's the punch list of things?
It's mostly interior work. So there's the basement problem, right? There's fixing the front room, which somebody decided they want to start to tear out. Taking out the kitchenette, making the bathroom ADA accessible. There's some exterior work that's required, a little bit, but not a lot. We're going to try to see if we can make the windows a little bit more airtight, and then do some site work on the site.
And after that's completed, let's say you get those funds, you do that work,
Yeah,
what else needs to be completed? If anything?
I'll like for. what do
Is
you
there
think?
is there beyond what you're asking for to accomplish, is there anything else that needs to be done?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Right.
Is there an area for parking? So for example, if you're going to use it for educational purposes,
We haven't really gotten that far yet, so.
so there may be some extra work that needs to be done there.
They were used it as the thrift store forever, so there was a lot of cars parked there over
You-
time.
Yeah, you can park on the street, so it's not great, but, and so. Questions?
That's it?
Are we good?
Okay, we're good.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I always loved that building. That and the story behind it, it was just amazing.
So,
You should have turned.
okay, great. I thought there was one more project, but I got it. There are 2 installation projects,
Little one, yeah.
1 mill project, so we're square. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Stay warm, and we'll expect the applications are due on the 31st, so Great. Okay. The next item on the agenda was discussion of eligibility for proposed projects. You know, it's been kind of interesting because we've, had a couple discussions with Stuart over the course of the year. We've talked about a couple different things. And I think like one thing that came out of those discussions was, I think the notice of intent part of this process that, we've done for maybe 3 years, 2 or 3 years now, has been good because it does allow us to get in front of things early and ask the right questions, and we're getting better quality applications. And he had an interesting idea about it. And it made me think we could even talk about this as we approach projects, is I think he said, a lot of towns now do a 2-stage application where the first stage is just tell me how your project is applicable. And then you decide on all the, whether it's applicable or not, it's applicability, yeah. And that, seems to be kind of good because then you can pivot to the question of how much do we want to spend and how do we want to spend it, and is the application complete, and because I think sometimes if we're getting down to the wire, it's better to have those discussions in January and February, right, where you can get town council involved and you can solicit some more ideas. Then, some years where we've had an application come in February and then we're still asking questions in March and April. It's just, the clock runs out and you don't have enough time. And it's tough. Some of them are tough calls. Like, what's the difference between, preservation and maintenance? And especially with the historic ones, I think they can get thorny. So I thought that was a good idea and maybe something we can take up at the end of the year. And even as we, get the final applications, maybe that's our first read. I don't think from what I've heard, I think everything has been in the ballpark for all the projects that are proposed. I think we've had other ones like, Sutton Pond, where it was just big and thorny and, we could have probably spent a year trying to figure out a project like that because there are so many aspects to it. But, I don't think there are a lot of close calls in the projects we have before us this year, unless anyone thinks. But maybe for next year we can, just create that 2-step process and say, if you haven't got a ruling on applicability by, have your application in December, we'll hear it in January, submit your final, and keep working on your final application for, February 1st or January 31st, whenever we do it. But that might, make it work a little bit easier. And then it's also, if we're considering, say, some years we've had a basket of maybe 10, 12 projects and it gets up, and the dollar amounts get big, it's kind of like, well, if this project is eligible, it's a big chunk. If it's not eligible, we're not even considering it. So I thought that was I just wanted to highlight that. If anyone has any questions or thoughts about that.
Rachel's is an example of project intent. She got some of us thinking about, geez, how can we help out, especially we're going to see maybe more of these little projects come along our way to help historically significant homes or whatever along the path. But her project was sort of absent some of the details you'd want to know. Is it been approved by the Historic Commission or register or whatever? I think, almost feel like she needs a mentor, to help her out for the project, but that's just my thought.
And for those applicants, I think their own financial situation is important, for us to know,
Sensitive, yeah.
I think, we can't have folks that are, well off and approving a project for them when they can easily afford it. So I think we have to be sensitive to that. That's what I mean, yeah.
Honestly, I don't think any of the people who live on Academy Road are going to come and ask for $5,000.
Right.
So I'm not worried about that.
Bring your bank account.
It's cases like, when we first heard of that, remember last year when, who was it, somebody that I think lived on Salem Street or something came in and it was great, the energy was great. The same thing tonight, it's like you just love those people because you need those people.
We need those people, that's
You need
exactly
those
right.
people.
And
Yeah.
so I'd like to encourage someone that wanna take
They
on a
wanna
piece of
do
property
something
and,
good.
because we all see like the little schoolhouse on Johnson Street and we see the one down at the end of, the one at the end of Johnson Street. And these buildings, nobody wants to take them on. I mean, there's money, you know, but if we gave them a little encouragement to maybe get out there, and we bought the paint and the wood, and they wanted to go out and get it, maybe someone would take these on and we won't lose them, because a lot of these things are just rotting away.
Oh, yeah. At least that was cleaned a little.
What kind of
bit up.
barns are we gonna start seeing coming our way?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, he's referring, Marcia, you didn't get this yet because you weren't on the committee, but John Smolak, who's in town and part of the Smolak family and an attorney, you know, basically took a picture of a bunch of barns around town that are in, you know, disrepair and said we should try to figure out something for this. The issue there is a little bit more difficult because the owners haven't come to us. So, you know, it's a little bit of, you know, need a little bit of push and pull,
Now
you know.
get into
Major
major
projects.
of private property.
On private property, yeah. And, you know, you know, and then you'd have to say, like, some people might not want to have, you know, public people, you know, people coming onto their property to
The
do doors.
interesting thing is, you think about every single case where we've actually moved a building, it's generally been people with pretty deep pockets
Yeah.
that have done it, but, you know, yeah, it's just unfortunate, but a big project has gotta be with somebody who has money. I mean,
Yeah.
But she didn't tell you, she's got two sisters who have all bought houses like her. So they all are restoring houses, one's in Amesbury, one's in Newburyport. And they pitch in together and they've been doing it.
That's where Dad comes in, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Oh, it helps.
As long as he doesn't get on the roof.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and
I hear
then,
that.
next we have the quarterly reports. You know, I did forward along to the committee the fact, and you may have seen on social media that the library stairs are complete. Yeah, so definitely a long process, and we'll all be invited to the grand unveiling.
Do you have a date on that?
No, she said she would send it along.
I drove by it during the day, a few days ago, and I went, I should really stop and take a picture, and I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't, because I
And they
was
did
running
do
back home, but
She did do a
I was
plaque.
like,
I haven't been in yet.
it looks really nice.
I'm in at least every other week, so
What was that project? What was the cost on that project?
a couple 100,000, 8 or 9, right?
Were they like rotted out?
No, it was.
Really badly
It was
disrepair?
more that the way the whole thing was constructed, water kept leaking into the building.
Yeah, every project we've done at the library has all been water related.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. I can't wait to
But it
see
is,
the grass, when the grass fills in,
Yeah.
and they take down the temporary,
They took the fence down.
temporary fencing.
fencing,
It'll look really
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So I would move that.
I was disappointed that we weren't mentioned in the newsletter from the town.
Yeah.
Yeah. They said it was all done by Friends of the library.
Oh, I read it quickly. I didn't notice that.
I go, oh, what happened?
Zach, can we send off an email about that?
That wasn't Kathleen, social media.
Yeah. So I would move that, you know, at the next, if we could take it upon ourselves to kind of look through the quarterly reports. It looks like a couple projects are, you know, the funds are expended and we're good to go. I think we might need to check. You know, I am, as one of the people who basically pushed to say we should make sure we're getting our name out there. We should kind of get out to some of these projects and take a look and make sure these plaques are installed so that folks can know where the,
Photographic proof.
yeah.
We'll have to see a big honking plaque by those stairs,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, I know she sent me a proof, so I know it's done. And I'll see it on Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rick.
So, you know, if we'll take it upon on that one, we'll look through, Zach, maybe you and I can come up with a list of projects to close. I think it's just good hygiene to go back and close out the projects and, you know, if there are any funds, they fall to the bottom line and we have an accurate balance before we're
Where are
going.
we with the boat ramp?
That's a good question. Do we get a,
Actually, it's
I don't
funny.
have a report yet because John Borghese, DPW, he's out sick right now. He's on vacation, but it's still ongoing. Like I've been getting invoiced.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were gonna get
Oh.
the last of it this year. I thought that was the plan, right?
This is the wrap-up year.
Yeah.
yeah, this is the final year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because at the planning board meeting on Tuesday night, Peter gave me a list of like the bill of materials of what the cost was. I don't know. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody ought to do a little value engineering to see if we need to spend that much money. I mean, it was like close to 900,000.
Oh, that they're coming for?
Well, that was the bill of materials, so I assume that's what they'll come for. Yeah.
Which project was that?
The boat ramp.
Like,
Wow.
But it was, you know,
It's on the water, so
yeah,
prices go up quickly.
okay. So we'll take a look and we'll,
But I can certainly look at the prices for you, Sean. Tell you if they're good or not.
okay. And then, financial reports, I think I would move that we, you know, we kind of combine those next time. Let's close out remaining projects, and then we'll take a look at where we are.
Do you remember, Bill, how much money we got from the match? You remember?
Ooh, I had it.
I think you can get it right off the website.
Yeah. You know what, I'll go through my,
While you're looking that up, Bill, I want to ask a question in terms of what the best approach is, what we've done in the past, what you all think of in terms of finding out kind of where we all stand on these projects. I feel like I didn't get a good understand, at least last year, I didn't have maybe a good understanding about where everyone stood until the last day, till we had sort of our most detailed conversations discussing them. And I wonder if there's any value at some point to talking about, you know, where we're at with these things before we get to the final vote at the end. Any thoughts on that? Why that
What
works
we've
or doesn't work?
always tried to do is to reach consensus on things and to point out early in the game whether there's going to be contention and there's going to be issues. I would say rarely is there not consensus. I mean, I think frankly, and it's only been over the last 5 years that I think we've had a lack of consensus on projects. I mean, you know, we really avoided a bullet by not approving the project for the house on the lake.
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, that would have been a disaster if we had approved that, because once we put CPA money in, we could not have done what we decided to do. We would have to refurbish that thing for a tune of like $8 or $10 million. So we were lucky it turned out that way. But I mean, I think to your point, Adam, and this gets at early scrutiny of projects and being frank among ourselves, I think we can reach a consensus and where there's an issue and so forth, and we just talk through everything.
I think you usually can tell how the discussion goes.
Right.
How everyone's leaning.
Yeah.
yeah, so our match this year was 20.28% or $482,000. So down a little. We had a couple like really big years, but a little lower this year. So, but you know, still, you know, pretty significant.
It's nothing to sneeze at.
No. So, okay. So,
Do you need to do anything with the closed account number? Do we need to take a vote on that to close those?
no, what I was proposing is that we basically just, Zach and I comb through after all the reports. You know, we got these quarterly reports, they come through. We'll look at the ones that say like, we'll look at all the ones that say we've spent the funds or we're done with the project and vote them all in once. So we'll have like a little, you know, bulleted list. Project 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, recommendation is to close. You know, and we do that, and that way we can go back through the finance department, the finance director, and get those funds allocated back to the, general pool of money we can spend.
Also for the next meeting, could we also get a list of projects that we didn't get a quarterly report on?
Sure.
Yeah.
'Cause I know that's-
I have my own.
I know you do. I know you try hard.
I'm still waiting on a few, but I've gotten most of them. And I am backtrack. I know there was a question about the Rolling Ridge project. I'm digging through that now. It's just complicated because a lot of people that are working on it aren't working with the town anymore, or aren't on the committee anymore. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of a mess, but I'm trying to do my best.
No, we are like 1,000. We're doing 1,000% better than we were.
A mess is better.
Yeah.
Less of a mess.
No, I mean, no, we know where the issues are now. I mean, there'd be times when we'd be saying like, oh, I got to call so-and-so and figure out what they're doing. We haven't heard from them for 2 or 3 years. And I think we're way, way past that, so that's good. And it is like, and frankly, the nature of the work is such that a lot of people who come to us this is not their day job. They're doing this off their side of their desk. They're volunteers as well. And so we got to give them a little grace. But I think we've made the process streamlined enough that they can do it. That's what I said. If you give somebody something they can do in 5 minutes, like they'll do it. If you ask them for a big 2 or 3 page report that they have to spend an hour on, they're never going to do it. So
Well,
I think,
it gets them in here, and then they understand,
yeah.
And
once they
what
get the
how
cadence
they need to
down,
approve.
yeah, and once they get the cadence down, it's very helpful too, because they're like, oh yeah, every quarter I'm going to get a form to fill out about the project. It's going to take me 5 minutes, and I better do that. So it's been good.
Just, I don't want names or anything or items, but is there anything big on the horizon for this year? Just say yes or no is a good answer.
There's a potential for something big coming from Ridgewood.
Okay.
And I've heard a couple things about some field things that could come to fruition.
It might be.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah. And like I had a good discussion with one of the things I talked to Stuart about was the tennis courts and sort of those sort of things. And it was interesting because he said like, okay, it's on school property and we're having a public use. So it may be that, we have to have the discussion and say like, if it can be used by the public 80% of the available time, then we'll fund 80% of the project or 50% of the project because.
Well, and that's where the lights come in too.
Yeah.
Is if they, if they don't have lights, that really limits it, right? That limits public access. If they do, then you got to think that the public access is going to increase significantly.
Right.
I don't understand, why would you do that when it's open to the public, but it's always open to the public? I mean, it's a
No, that's
public
what I'm
school.
saying. Well, but there are certain hours. So like
events.
during tennis season, right?
Yeah.
Like
And-
during tennis season, you
And
may say like
practice.
you have practice from, or maybe they're saying that during school hours, they might be using it for gym class, or things like that. So you need to get it all solidified because you don't want some new athletic director to come in and be like, these are my tennis courts, because it could happen, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you get it written into the agreement and that we're
Oh, yeah,
paying
no,
the
in
right
the
amount.
agreement, but I didn't understand the funding, because it's a public school, these are all taxpayers who are there, so I don't know why we couldn't fund the whole thing, but say we need to.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we just have to make sure it's
two,
reasonable public access.
Right.
the two caveats he said was, hey, when the school owns a property, and this has happened in other places, if the school owns a property and you spend CPC on it, it's still owned by the school, and they can still decide. He said like another community, they paid for a park or some sort of thing, and then they said, oh, we need a new school, when they bulldozed the park and put up a building, and the CPC was kind of like, what? And they were like, yep, well, it's ours, like we changed our, we
So
changed our
I see
mind.
where
Kinda why
the
the
agreement
school
would work,
complex
I
was
like the agreement.
Changed over to the care and custody of the
Right.
town and not the school.
Can
Yeah.
we put in those stipulations in our?
That's what he was saying. Like, really have your head up and be aware when you're going into the process. And we really should have a view about it because especially, I mean, we all know it's a challenging time for school budgets all over the Commonwealth. So,
Generally, am I allowed, like if I want to, me and my kid want to go hit balls in the ball field at noon in the afternoon? Am I generally allowed at the high school to
See,
go
I don't
and do
actually
that?
know the question, answer to that question.
No, I'm not.
You know,
Not
Yeah.
during school hours.
yeah,
Not during school hours.
Everything is by permit,
yeah.
Right, so that,
technically.
so that could be a challenge for this project.
But no, I mean,
Well,
I think
You just write that
Right.
into the.
You just read it in,
decision
yeah.
funding.
Yeah.
I don't
And I-
think, I don't think the tennis courts were ever really treated like that, though.
Yeah.
People play tennis all day long down
Right,
there.
I don't see why
Uh,
they shouldn't be able to, as
I've
long
never
as they're not
seen-
interfering with,
Right.
you know.
But a field that they would use for recess,
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
couldn't just walk on and take part in, you know.
Right.
right. But, you know, it's good things to be thinking about as we head into the process, I think.
Just post it. We can post the hours right on the thing. For
Yeah,
this hours,
exactly.
we have practice
I-
and
lots of-
games and these
yeah.
dates, and that's it.
When you get to more crowded parts of the state, you see it all the time.
Yeah.
The track is open from, you know, the track is open for walkers and
These,
runners
yep.
from these hours to
Yep.
those hours, you know, that sort of thing.
The other thing that's gonna be interesting with that project is how it affects the abutters.
Whether they
The lights.
support it or not, yeah.
Well, the noise of the,
The noise and the lights, if there's
Noise.
lights.
Are you hearing anything about that around the neighborhood?
no, I didn't want to, I haven't wanted to bring it up with any of the neighbors.
As far as it needing to be done, though, I mean, I went over there and it's in bad shape. It's
Rick's-
no question.
I mean, Steve's been over talking to neighbors, though.
He has
He's met
been,
with a few neighbors so far.
He's good about that.
I mean, but there's no question that it's in bad shape. Like,
Yeah,
It's-
that- Nothing's
it's-
been done to it.
it's not even. It's. I don't know how they can have a. It must be difficult to have a competitive match there. I mean, it's not. You know.
Tennis court, this one.
Okay. All right, we have minutes from December. Do we have any motions relative
Make
to
a
the
motion
minutes?
to approve the minutes from December?
Second.
I was not there, so I will recuse myself.
I was not there.
Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
And Marcia would have to abstain too.
right.
That's why I'm not saying anything.
Mm,
I know the rules.
Okay. Okay, any further motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.